Hello and welcome back to another review, this time for the Fantastic Four. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more reviews like this, and please leave a comment below letting me know if you enjoyed the film or not. The first character I will talk about is Reed Richards, played by Miles Teller. To be honest, I wanted to see more out of his character, but we just don't get enough of him. To be honest, I did not like this interpretation of Reed Richards, and I don't think it's just because of the actor they chose. I'm pretty sure that Miles Teller did the best with what he had, but he just did not feel like Mr. Fantastic to me. We also really don't get a lot out of his character in this movie either. We see him for about the first hour of the movie, then he doesn't show up until the very end. He wasn't this egotistical science that thought he knew everything, and I just wish we got more out of him. Next, I will talk about Sue Storm, played by Kate Mara. I think she was just okay in this movie, and to be honest, I actually think that she is a better Sue Storm than Jessica Alba was. She fit the character well in my opinion, but I still feel like they didn't get her character right. I will be upfront and say that I am just going off of what I've seen on the internet about the original Fantastic Four, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. I have known her to be the level-headed, quote-unquote, leader of the Fantastic Four. Even though Reed Richards technically is, I feel like Susan is always the one to keep them together. In this one, we don't really see her connection to the other characters. And sure, we see a little bit of something going on with Reed, but otherwise she doesn't really interact with the others, and that's quite disappointing. Also, I don't remember Sue Storm being able to fly. Next, I will talk about Johnny Storm, played by Michael B. Jordan. I think he was a good actor for this role, to be quite honest. My problem with this character, though, is that he doesn't seem like the Johnny Storm that we've seen previously, where he's the funny guy who would do this stuff the way he wants to do stuff, and is basically the comedic relief of the family. In this movie, we don't really see him be funny. Like, for instance, the only time we ever actually see him somewhat act like Johnny Storm was in the beginning of the movie when he was street racing. What I do like, though, is that we get more of a story with him than any of the other characters. I don't know what it is with the Fantastic Four movies, where they only give more of a story to a certain member of the Fantastic Four, and not all of them together. So now we have the Thing, played by Jamie Bell. I honestly don't know how I feel about his character, because he just feels like a side character, to be quite honest. They plant the seeds for him to have a storyline in this film, where he worries about the way he looks, and how he feels about his situation, but they never go through with that, which is quite disappointing. I don't know, he felt more like the Hulk in this movie than anything else. Also, for God's sake, put some pants on this man. Last but not least is Dr. Doom, played by Toby Kebbell. You thought we didn't get much out of Reed Richards. Well, let's talk about Dr. Doom, because he was barely in this movie. Like I have said in my past reviews for the Fantastic Four, I want to remind you that Dr. Doom is my favorite Marvel villain, so I'm going to be very harsh. I yet again do not like this interpretation of Dr. Doom. I did have some problems with the Dr. Doom in the first two Fantastic Four movies, but at least he had somewhat of a good storyline, as well as a good character design, whereas in this movie, neither of those exist. This is the worst Dr. Doom I've ever seen in the limited amount of comics I've read, as well as the live-action films. I'm pretty sure we only have him in this movie for about 20 minutes throughout this entire movie, and this movie is an hour and a half long. They have him as one of the lead scientists to make the teleportation device, which is cool, but my problem is he doesn't show up until the last 15 minutes of the movie. Why would you introduce us to the main villain of the movie with only 15 minutes left? This means that they're just shoving him in there to show that the Fantastic Four can fight with each other. There is no motive for Doctor Doom to destroy the Earth, and there's no motive for him to kill everyone. I myself could see the fact that maybe he wanted revenge because they didn't try hard enough to save him. But no, we were never told this fact, so all we have to do now is just speculate as to why he decided to become the villain. I also absolutely hated the character design. Who in their right mind okayed this design? He looks terrible. And the design looks nothing like his comic book design. And I've seen so many cosplays of Doctor Doom that are so much better than what they do in this movie. And I just do not understand why they let his character design be this in the final product. The only thing I enjoyed about his character in this movie was the fact that he was extremely powerful, and that was it. I think the actor did alright, but otherwise, this was a horrible interpretation of Doctor Doom. There are only really 2 positive parts to this movie, but otherwise it ain't that great. I think the CGI is really well done in this movie. For characters like Reed Richards, as well as Johnny and the Thing, you would really need a lot of CGI. Obviously, this would mean that you would need a higher budget, as well as really good CGI, and I'm fairly impressed with how realistic they look. I'm especially impressed by the CGI done on Reed Richards, because elasticity is probably really hard to animate. So I gotta give a round of applause to the VFX artist for making it look so realistic without it also looking goofy. I also gotta mention that with The Thing, I really like the subtle details that you can hear the rocks moving against each other, and also the fact that he just looks really good besides the pants thing. I like the idea that the military was using the Fantastic Four as an asset instead of human beings. I say this because it's a very realistic aspect of having superpowers. What I mean by this is the fact that if, let's say, somebody were to get superpowers, the first thing the government would think of trying to do is militarize it and destroy the enemy with it. I honestly wish that they would have gone even deeper with this aspect of the movie and made the military the enemy instead of Doctor Doom. I overall just found this movie really boring. The first half of the movie is just them trying to make this teleportation device, and that's all we see them do for the first hour of the movie. For a movie that's only an hour and a half long, you really need to add more to the story instead of just having somebody make a teleportation device, have it fail, have a bad guy, win in the end. I think part of the reason why this movie was boring was because of the runtime. I think if they had a longer runtime, they could have had a better script, and they could have made the villain even better as well as making those scenes about making the machine really entertaining and interesting. I think they tried to shove too much into this movie, as well as not shoving enough into it, and I hope that just makes sense. They should have not had a villain in this movie. The reason why I say this is because they obviously went into this movie with the outcome of these people getting their powers. I would have really liked this movie where they got their powers, but they had to get used to using them and fitting in with the real world with these abilities. Admittedly, they did try and do it in this movie, but they did it miserably. Every once in a while, we would have this scene where they would make an offhand comment saying how much they don't like having these powers. They should have gone more into that, as well as their abilities, and how they can use them and why they're struggling to use these abilities. Let's be honest, if they just kept the parts where they were trying to figure out their powers as well as having the military forcing them to use their powers, that could have actually been a really compelling story. That's what should be done more with superhero movies, and that is to show an origin story without a villain. You don't always need to have a villain in a story for it to be a good story. This movie could have been a great example of why you don't need a villain in a movie. With all of that said, what would I rate Fantastic Four? Well, with the boring storyline as well as the characters not being very compelling, and then introducing a shitty villain with only 15 minutes left, I'm gonna have to give this movie a 5 out of 10. This movie is not as bad as many people have said, but it's definitely not a great one either. I would go as far as saying that the original two Fantastic Four movies were actually better than this one. I know my scores of those movies may conflict with this one, but overall, this was not an entertaining movie, whereas those ones were. Anyways guys, let me know in the comment section below whether you like the Fantastic Four or not. And please leave a like and consider subscribing if you want to see more reviews like this. And thank you all so much for watching, and see you in the next review.